Potent Productivity Podcast, where we pull back the curtain and dive into the real emotional journeys behind entrepreneurship. We're your hosts, Sarah
and Robert, and we know that building a business isn't just about crushing your to-do list or chasing overnight success. It's about navigating the ups and downs and unexpected turns that come with following your passion.
We're not here to sell you easy wins or rehearse the same tired success stories you've heard 1,000 times. We're here to talk about the moments when enthusiasm is buried beneath a mountain of tasks, when self-doubt creeps in, and when you're not sure where your road leads next.
So each week, we'll share raw conversations, real lessons, and practical strategies to help you reconnect with your creativity, build resilience, and rediscover what excited you about your business in the first place.
If you're ready for honest talk, community, and actionable inspiration, you're in the right place. Let's get real. Let's reclaim your potent productivity together. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Potent Productivity Podcast. I'm your co-host, Sarah Pitts, and joining me is Robert Kabaka. Hi, Robert.
Hello, Sarah.
I hope you're having a fabulous day. So
I
today
am now.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So today we are talking about the truth about how to get noticed in the marketplace for solo business owners.
Okay.
So loads and loads of people struggle with this issue. It's been an issue for me. I'm sure it's been an issue for you. We'll get onto all of that in a second. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is that differences are good, right? We're taught that differences are good, and we have to be different to everybody else when we're in business. And that's how we stand out. But the problem is that I think, and I have made this mistake, is that we try and be too different. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah. Tell me more, though.
Yeah. So when I started my career, I started as a personal trainer. And everybody and his brother was a personal trainer back then. It's even worse now. So trying to stand out in that particular marketplace was really, really difficult. So I got bored very quickly with I want to lose weight and tone up kind of information that I would get from my clients. And there's only so many ways you can dress up, eat less, move more. So my brain really wasn't being challenged in that particular area. So I got very interested in injuries because, well, I was about as flexible as a brick, and I had, was manipulated badly in my early 20s. And so I had every injury going, and I wanted to learn about those things. So when I came out of doing a master's in sports injury and all that kind of stuff, personal trainer didn't really describe what it was that I was doing. So I tried to move away from that tag because I didn't want to be lumped in with everybody else and the whole, lose weight, tone up thing. Because if I did, then people that came to me would have a different expectation of what I was going to give them. And then they were like, oh, well, this isn't for me. I didn't really expect this. And they'd leave frustrated, So I was like, well, how am I going to explain myself that's totally different? And so I came up with all sorts of ways of describing my job title that I thought would set me apart, but actually just confused people. And ended up having to explain, that whole question, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
I used to hate it because I'd have to try and explain it to people because they didn't understand what I meant. Has that happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that detail too, because it really is an identity crisis,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like, how do I see myself in my own business? How do I see myself, you know, compared to my competitors? How do I see myself, you know, with my clients? And it's like really trying to label myself. And it's like, great, this label works for these people, but it doesn't work for all those people. Now I need a different label. And then all of a sudden you got these stacks of labels on yourself. You're trying to, and you're trying to integrate that with how you see yourself as a human being and as a business person, as an entrepreneur, and layer all that stuff, what we've been talking about the last 5 weeks as well. It's like, wow, how do we navigate separating ourselves enough to be, unique to our ideal audience, but we can't figure that out until we really understand who we are and what we're doing. What is my business? Who is my ideal audience?
Hmm.
Because when we were working with this other group, it was always coming back to who is your target audience?
Hmm.
Who is your avatar?
Hmm.
And really being able to be clear about that, because I found for me that once I was clear about who the avatar was, the ideal audience, just so
Sure.
lay people know what that means, Avatar is not the movie Avatar, not the cartoon, which is the best cartoon series on the planet ever created, Last Airbender. But anyway, so Avatar is just a representation that's used as marketing language for your ideal audience.
Hmm.
Who, if you had your dream come true of your absolute most ideal customer, who would that be? Right? That's your avatar. And so once we know who that is, then it's like, oh, okay, so this is what I do for them. Who I am is just all these collections of different things that I do. But for this particular business, for this particular product or service, whatever, being able to align myself, my message to that avatar, to that ideal audience, really, really clearly delineates, you know, what's working and what's not working. Um, because I've had numerous businesses, just before this call, we were talking about my entertainment career, and it's like I used to think, not just think, I used to do and really believe that in order to be noticed, I had to be outrageous and seen and all these different things. And that's not true because, well, it was true because I didn't know who my audience was, right? I wasn't clear about that. I was just like, oh, the world is my audience.
Hmm.
And that's not actually true. In marketing, I think it's really important that we understand that my product and service serves a particular type of person best. That's my core. And then it's going to serve this these other group of people, not the best, but it will serve them. And then there's like this other circle, everybody else.
Hmm.
So if I spend my time trying to market to everybody, then I have to be everything to everybody. And my message is going to be confused. It's going to be irrelevant most of the time. I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on advertising that doesn't go anywhere,
Hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. So you got me on a roll. You better shut me up here because
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, the fitness industry is a really great example of this because fitness does
yeah,
actually help everybody. So when people are new to the industry and they don't know what their specialism is or how they prefer to do things, they see themselves as a fitness instructor or a personal trainer or wherever it is, and they see that title. But if that's the only way they're describing themselves,
right.
then they could be a personal trainer who's into high intensity fitness. They could be into weightlifting. They could be into yoga, and those are very, very different nuances of fitness. Or you could be a combination of all of those things. But until you start describing, until you start imagining, until you start thinking through what your differences are, you're just the same as everyone else because a personal trainer, give or take, has pretty much the same certifications as every other personal trainer because they're global fitness qualifications, you know?
Wow.
So if it's like you said, it's like how you see yourself, it's how you describe yourself. And those differences then start being very good.
Hmm.
But until you address that, until you see those differences in yourself, then it's really hard to describe them to other people.
Yes. Yeah. And I think every business owner experiences that. I don't know about you if you go to like business networking events and things like that where you're socializing and meeting other business owners and you're like, Hi, what do you do? Hi, what do you do? And you ask that question to somebody, and then a half hour later, they're still telling you what they do
Hmm.
because they're not clear about what they do.
Yeah, that was
You know,
me.
me too. Been
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But once I defined who my ideal audience was, and once I defined what my real product and service was, and once I defined who that product and service serves best, and how I put my own personality into that product and service, only then was I able to say who and what it was that I done. I was only then was I able to say what I do very clearly in less than 30 seconds,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, I part of the issue that I had was that I didn't have a qualification that was easily recognizable to other people.
Yeah.
Okay. So over here in the UK, we call physical therapists physiotherapists, and it's protected name. So you have to do a physiotherapy degree in order to be able to call yourself a physiotherapist, right? So you can't just do anything, and but to the consumer, a physio is somebody who treats bodies on a table, right? They treat injuries. So, as far as the consumers are concerned, everybody who does that is a physio. But I couldn't call myself a physio because I'm not allowed. So
Uh,
then it became, well, how do I describe what I'm doing without using this phrase, without telling people that I can fix their injuries, because that's dangerous too. There's liabilities and limitations and legal aspects of that kind of aspect too. So in that sense, it wasn't really about who my audience was. It was more about how do I describe myself within these limitations, because I'm not allowed to call myself, I'm not allowed to use the language that most people recognize. So then it became a big rolling list of all of these different ways of
yeah,
describing myself.
right.
First I was a movement therapist, and then it was, and I ended up just saying I'm a sports injury therapist. And people then knew what I was talking about. And I think this is the point, really, is that you can be different, but if your area is so different that nobody knows what it is, then you end up being that person that's still explaining what they do half an hour later.
Yeah.
And I think that's really where similarities are really powerful, and they're better than the differences in a way, because you have to be slightly different to stand out, but most people don't know that they have to be similar to stand out. Because if your people don't follow your train of thought from your first word, they're never going to understand what it is that you do.
Right.
So it's a bit like directions. If you're trying to tell somebody how to get to a certain place, you know, like if I was trying to come to your house, your neighborhood. I've never been there. So if you say to me, "Oh, you know where the old post office used to be?" No, because one, it's not there anymore. And two, I've never been there. So how am I supposed to know?
Right.
But if you continue the conversation from your understanding of that old post office, then I'm not listening because, well, I didn't get it in the first place. So it's kind of like you have to kind of, and you hear this phrase all the time in marketing, don't you? Meet people where they are.
Yeah.
So if I was come to your house, the first place that I would land, or the first place that I would know, is the airport, right?
Mm.
So if you then started saying to me, "Oh, first you're going to hit this airport, and then you're going to go from that airport to here," I'd be like, "Well, okay, I can follow along now because it makes sense to me."
Right.
I get that. But most people don't backtrack far enough
Yeah.
to the similarity to make that connection with the people and their understanding of what's going on.
Right. Yeah, and clarity is everything. When I People say, what do you do, Robert? And I'm like, well, I'm a business coach. I help people start, run, and grow their business.
Hmm.
And I keep it just that short. That's really vague, but at the same time, it's clear enough to say, oh, wait, tell me more about.
Yes.
And they can ask a specific question. Oh, I have a business idea. What would you think about this? Or I have an existing business and I'm struggling with, oh, okay. And so I can just give them enough information to see if it lands with them
Hmm.
enough that they respond and ask a question. And it does.
Exactly, because we only have a few seconds to get somebody's attention. And most people think that they have to give everything in that first few seconds. It's a bit like the new personal trainer that's trying to cram everything they know into the first session. When the client's already paid for 10 sessions, so you've got 10 to go at. But these people, they try and shove everything they know straight into like the first 30
Yeah.
minutes or whatever it is. And we do that a lot as humans when we're not sure of ourselves, you know,
Yeah.
and we do overload people and we
Yes.
lose people that way too. And
Yes.
it's almost like, it's like you said, that breadcrumb of the similarity. And it's like watching that penny drop. And as long as the penny drops, if somebody said to me, "What do you do?" and I go, "I'm a sports injury therapist," they'd go, "Oh, cool." If they're not interested, they'd be like, "Oh, fair enough." Conversation moves on to something else.
Yeah.
And I don't need to waste my breath with this person. They are not interested in what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think that's efficient. I really think that's efficient because I was definitely one of those people that would just go on and on and on and on. Because it's like, I've had all these careers, I've done all these things, and it's like, how can I leave this out of this conversation? And that was just ego.
Yeah.
It was pride. It was, and not bad pride. It was good pride because I'm proud of everything that I've done.
Hmm.
Why not? But the mistake was thinking that everybody needed to know all of it all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
well, wait a minute. No. It's like, you and I have known each other for a long time, and it wasn't until today before this call that you found out that I was a professional clown, and it's like I was a stage performer for many years, and so yeah, there's so much that we've done, and I have to remind myself all that is great experience for me to continue to learn from.
Hmm.
What am I doing now? What's important now to the person that I am trying to serve right now?
Yes.
Do they need to know about the restaurants and the chocolates and the performing and the TV? Do they need to know about, all the IT and cybersecurity work? What do they know? What do they need to know right now that's going to serve them? Because they're
Exactly.
the most important person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're listening to this conversation with us, and I know we are, so it's really important for you to ask yourself that question.
Mm.
How am I confusing my audience?
Yeah.
It's
And
a
I,
great
I
question.
I think one of the best things I learned when I was struggling to describe myself to people, you go to a social event and somebody says, "What do you do?" And you say something that's completely different to what they know, and they're just blank face staring at you like, "What the hell's that?" And they don't really care, so they don't want to ask. But then you
Right.
say something that sounds reasonably different or sounds something, familiar enough for them to ask more questions.
Yeah.
And so when I used to say, "Well, I'm a sports injury therapist," they'd say, "Oh, you mean like physio?" And I go, "Yeah, kinda. But you know how you go to a physio and they poke and prod all your sore bits, and sometimes feels a bit worse than you went in." They go, "Yeah." I go, "I don't do that." "Oh, so what is it you do then?" I'm like, "Yeah, and then I can explain my difference, but
Yes. Yes.
making that connection with somebody on the similar side of things
Yeah.
allows them to follow my journey and follow my process so that I can then explain my differences
Yeah.
if they're interested.
Right.
And I think that it feels then more like an invitation rather
Exactly.
than trying to not push myself on other people, but feeling like I have almost have to prove myself.
And I
No.
think there's a level of desperation that shows up. I know it did for me. It's
Me too.
like, and I think that a lot of these negative behaviors are well intentioned.
Hmm.
Of course they're well intentioned or we wouldn't do them. But they're not productive for us.
Mm.
So we have to learn to discern the intention from the outcome.
Hmm.
And when we can align, my when I can align my mission to your need, you know, we can have a work experience together. I can serve a client, etc.
Mm.
But when I'm coming from a place of, desperation, like you said, it's like I have to give everything in that first session, even though they bought 10 sessions or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like bringing a dump truck, to a small conversation.
Mm.
It when we confuse people, we lose them.
Yeah. And I think when we overload them, it can
Yeah,
sound very much like we're trying to sell to them.
right,
And I
right.
think it feels like that a lot of the time when you're saying it. And then
Yeah,
it feels really awkward and icky. And then you
yeah.
hate the idea of, you don't want to go to the social occasion because you don't want anybody to say, what is it you do? I used to avoid that question so much. I used to say to people, I'm self-employed. That's it. That's all I'd say. I work for myself. Oh, because then they get the feeling that I don't want to talk about it.
Right, right, right.
So then they don't push the issue.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times it does, we can come across as, you know, I don't want to use the word desperation again, but it's like we're really trying to oversell, you
Hmm.
know, um, we're trying to provide too much information. And again, that just gets people lost.
Yeah.
What I like about what you and I are doing here is like we're just kind of like pulling all this stuff apart so we can look at the insides.
Yes.
What is it that makes all this work?
Yeah.
And what is it that sets ourselves up for failure? Not even for failure. It's like we find ourselves banging our head up against the same brick wall and we don't know why.
Yes.
Like, oh my God, I'm doing it again, but I'm expecting, to get 5 clients out of this, but it's like, what's wrong? And we turn it in on ourselves. What's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong
Hmm.
with you.
No.
There's
There's
nothing wrong.
one thing that underpins everything, though, that uncertainty, that trying
Yeah,
to prove ourselves to everybody, and it always comes from doubt.
yeah,
If you have any aspect of doubt about who you are and what you do and why you're great, then it's going to come across as desperation and
yeah,
proving yourself and you
yeah,
know because we try and cover up all of these fears
yeah,
and all of that uncertainty by overcompensating.
yeah. And I'll just say here too that, if you haven't seen the previous 5 episodes, you need to, or
Yes.
we're episode 9. So if you haven't seen the previous 8 episodes,
Yeah, yeah.
especially the first four, which is why I said that, it's like the first 4 episodes really got into this a lot.
Mm.
So go back and watch the first 4 episodes.
Watch them all.
Watch them all. But I mean, but that is a cornerstone. It
Yeah.
really is a cornerstone. Finding that authenticity, finding your authentic self, aligning with that so that you can have a clear message and deliver a product and service that people are going to rave about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you
Yeah.
want to set yourself apart, forget about competition and spend all your time and energy on just being the best you that you can for your
Mhm.
clients. They will never forget. They will
Yeah.
never forget. Promise you. They will
Yeah.
never forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I know you hate this question, but what is your big takeaway from today?
Yeah, so the big takeaway, you know, um, what is the big takeaway? Desperation seems to stand out. It's like we're trying to set ourselves apart and thinking that I need to overcompensate,
Hmm.
you know, and we don't. So I think my biggest takeaway is just that, we don't need to overcompensate. We just need to get clear about our message and who we're serving.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me there's two really big takeaways. One is that um, when your potential customers understand the similarity first and then the difference, they can make a more informed decision about
Mm,
whether they like what you're talking about or not. And we
hmm
spoke last week about know, like, and trust, and knowing and liking and trusting yourself, and all that kind of stuff. But if people don't connect with you first on that similarity basis, if they don't follow your logic and they don't follow what you're talking about, then the decision will always be no,
mm,
because they don't understand. So when you can walk them from that similarity to the difference, then you're more likely to get a yes.
yeah,
But then the second thing is that less is more when it comes to the question of what do you do.
yeah,
Like you said, like that 2 or 3 words. Oh, I do this. And it's very quick, it's very short, and people either get it or they don't. And if they get it and they want to know more, they'll ask. And if they get it and they don't want to know more, they won't ask. But if they don't get it, then they will ask,
yeah.
you know?
That's
So that's, yeah, that's really my takeaway from today.
that's great. And what's your takeaway, our audience? You
Yeah,
know, what did you
absolutely.
what did you get from this that has really resonated with you? Share it with us. We'd love to hear. We'd love to be part of the conversation. Reach out, comment, like, share, all the above.
Yes.
Subscribe.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
Desperate. We're desperate. No, no. And that's what Sarah and I play off each other really, really well because it's just like we're so nonchalant about this, but we can be because we know what works and we've been through all this and we just love being able to share, you know, the awareness, the journey of awareness that we've gone through.
hmm.
And
Yeah, and I
so,
think for me, it's just like I felt like I was doing it all on my own. I'm sure you felt like that at the time too. And so there's one of the reasons why we created the podcast was because we didn't want you to feel like you're on your own.
yeah.
We people don't talk about the ups and downs of business. They talk about the how-tos of business. And I'm sick of it. I want to know what struggles people went through. I want to know how it felt. And we have these conversations all the time. And we really want to know what your point of view is. So put it in the comments, share it with us. We will love to start having a conversation with you. So at least you don't feel like you're by yourself. So you can subscribe and find out more about everything that we're doing at potentproductivitypodcast.com. We like to keep it simple, just one place you can find everything where you need it. So thanks for listening, watching, whatever it is you're
Thank you.
doing. We'll see you next time.
Absolutely. See you
Bye.
next time. Bye now.